I'll take you for a ride on the devil's ship. I'll take you for a ride where you sink or swim. Now come with me and let this story begin.
Dr. Laurie, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
This is exciting.
I'm so happy to be here. Really excited.
Is it too early to talk about sex?
It's never too early to talk about sex.
But I want to hear. But what I want to know first, how did you get your start into radio? How did you decide, you know what? These are topics everyone wants to talk about. I'm not just going to answer questions at the clinic. Let me get on that. How did that happen?
So this happened a long time ago, probably before you were born, I would think. I started as a social worker. I was, helping people and what have you. And then I went and did some training in sex therapy. So I did a training program, and I was working for a clinic. The Montreal General Hospital had a human sexuality clinic. And one day in walks Rick Moffat of, at the time, he was just a co-host, or he was a host on Mix 96, which was then Mix 96, now Virgin. And they had a show once a week called The Love Line. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember.
You were probably a kid,
I was a kid,
right?
because that's when I listened to radio.
Okay, so that back then it was like a lot of youth listening and what have you, and they were turning a show into, like, they wanted to deal with sexual topics, which was very innovative, right? It was like, wow, this is really good. So he came to the clinic and asked who wanted to do it, and I said, hey, I was like 24 or 25 years old. I said, I'm going to do it. Like, I'd love to do it. So I did that. That's how I got my start in radio. I never aspired to be on radio. It was never anything that I was looking for, but just so happened like that. And then
was it meant to be a long run, or were they just trying to test it?
Oh, no. This went on I did it for 9 years.
No, you did it for 9, but was that the intention initially?
I think it was the intention was, I really don't know. Like, did they think it was going to fly? Did they think that we weren't booted off the air or anything? It became like a cultish kind of show where you had young people, maybe you did this with your friends, but trying to stump us,
I never.
Let's stump the therapist.
Too much effort.
They would ask like crazy questions and what have you, and they would giggle in the background. You could tell like there were little groups of, people trying to do that. So I did that for 9 years, like for, once a week, what have you. And we were on a rotating basis with a couple of other therapists. And then Rick Moffat ended up going to CJD, our sister station, and he was hired as the program director there for a short time. I don't remember how many years, but and then he decided he was going to shake things up and put on, he says, how about doing a sex show on CJD? And that was like, oh, okay. So he asked me if I wanted to do it and if I wanted my own show. I said, sure, I'll give it a try. And initially we started once a week, and then very soon, like 3 months in, we started doing it on a nightly basis. And I didn't think it was going to, like, I thought, this is a conservative station. Like, maybe I don't know what's going to happen when I start talking about, anal sex and threesomes and or whatever else. Because I was going to talk about everything. I said, if I'm going on the air, I'm going to talk about everything.
And they had no issues with it.
They had no issue. I was never censored there. Listen, I'm a professional, right? I'm a doctor of psychology. I come to it with evidence-based information. Like, this is not just salacious,
If anyone's going to talk about anal, it's got to be you.
Right, there you go, right? So because of that, so I thought, okay, how long is this going to last, right? So every year it would be like, ooh, am I going to get hate mail? Am I going to, are they going to get hate mail, whatever? It didn't happen. The only thing were complaints about billboards. We had, when we were promoting the show, we had these huge billboards on DeCarry that said, hunk if you're horny.
Is that what they complained about?
and then we're complaining, like, how do I explain horny to my kids, right? So that was the big complaint. I said, well, listen, there's a discussion to be had right there, right? So, and then that's how the show began, and it lasted on air for 22 years. We celebrate 22 years on the radio every single night.
Did you ever get a question that you were like, how is an adult asking me this?
Well, yes. Listen, there's and when it comes to the population, there's a range of people who have either very limited information or a lot of information. Okay. So it is surprising how often I get questions with like some very, very basic questions, where like really basic stuff. Like, you're wondering, didn't you learn about this in school? Or
like stork-related questions.
Like stork-related questions, exactly. Like sometimes really, and I get a lot of, a lot of emails, and we got, then we started moving into text messages, and so people, like, it was a constant,
like an evolution.
And a constant rollout of questions and people sending in questions and stuff. So It was always fascinating to me because I got to see what people are actually asking and want to know about. And so that would sometimes influence, okay, what topic am I going to do now? What guest am I going to have so that we can elaborate more on the subjects that people wanted to hear about? The reality is, look, sometimes I talked about things only few people wanted to hear about. You know, some of the stuff was like, I don't want to hear it. You know, it's like too much information for me. Or it made, you know, how many times people said, you made me blush, or this topic made me blush, or whatever. But yes, the whole point was talking about sexuality in a very, kind of a nonchalant way. It's part of life, and taking away that shame. Kind of not making people feel like they had to be red in the face talking about a topic that everybody wonders about. Everybody does it. Everybody wonders about it. So it's been amazing to be able to reach so many people over the years and really educate.
And did you, when you got into, let's say, psychology, were you thinking of specializing in sex and sexuality? Is that something that came later? What motivated you in the beginning? Was it the taboo of sex and how I feel like a lot of people aren't educated in this? Let me get into it. Or was it people and then sex came later? Like, what was it that was the driving force?
So that's a good question because when I was a social worker, I started working in the area of sexual abuse. For some reason, a lot of people started coming to me who had been molested and what have you. And I started to see the evolution of sexuality, like what happens when somebody's sexuality is so stunted in a way and traumatized, to see how it evolves in adult sexuality. And that's what got me really interested in
that could destroy you.
Right, exactly. So that was like my first foray into it. And when I was doing my degree in social work, I had a teacher who was teaching a sexuality class, and it was the way she talked about it. She inspired me. Dr. Carol Christensen, shout out to her, but she inspired me. And then I went to see, I wanted to know how did she do her training, and so I went to the same trainer that she did, and then that's how it all began. And then eventually I moved into doing my degrees, at least my graduate degrees in psychology. So then I just became more and more of a specialist, and now I specialize in marriage therapy and sex and marital counseling and things like that. So
have you seen a change in people? Have you seen problems that used to exist that don't, or stuff that was not a problem and now,
That's a great question, because when I was a young sex therapist, so you're talking about, let's say in my, before I even reached 30, the average guy that would come to the clinic with erectile dysfunction was like 65, an older guy and things like that. Today, I don't even see those guys anymore. Today, your average guy that comes with erectile dysfunction is in his late 20s to early 30s.
Is it real erectile dysfunction, or do they think it is?
It's real, but it's it's psychologically induced, right? So what I'm seeing more of that I never saw, let's say 30 years ago, is like performance anxiety, like serious performance anxiety in very young men. So I see men in their early 20s with performance anxiety. And I blame a few things. First of all, there's pornography, right? So there's a lack of sex education to talk about pleasure, to talk about all the things that you need to know what real sex is. Then you have accessibility to porn, which it's not an issue that I have with pornography. It's more about the early exposure to it and the continuous exposure to it before you even have sex. So by the time you meet up with a real life person, you're thinking, like, there's all these ideas in your head of how it should be, how she should respond, how I should be, how I should look, how she should look. And so that creates so much stress and just anxiety about, like, oh my God, am I going to get this right? Am I going to be good enough? Am I going to, rather than looking at it as a holistic experience and what have you, they're just looking at it as, I just got to get this right.
Yeah, this is what I'm seeing on screen. I have to try to mimic it. And if it's not the exact same thing, there must be a problem. Am I the problem?
Exactly.
We've had topics about this on other podcasts. We've talked about, I had a theory a while ago. I said, I feel like porn, in just how it's so easily accessible, is going to ruin an entire generation. And someone commented recently and said, you're wrong. It already ruined a current generation. And there was articles about young back in the day in university, that's when people would have a lot of sex, college, university. Mm-hmm. And now men especially are staying virgins till they're in their 30s. And apparently it's related to this.
There's more than that, because it's true. If you look at the research in the last few years, sex has gone down. In other words, the frequency of sex, people having sex has gone down. The age of first intercourse has gone up. So before it was like 16 and a half. Now it's a little older. There's a few reasons for this. First of all, people aren't socializing as much. Before you'd go out, you'd go to a bar, you'd meet somebody, you'd start dating, you'd hook up, whatever it was. Now people are behind a computer. So they're more lazy. They are socializing less. They are not learning the skills they need to socialize as well. That's, I think, a big part of the problem. They get horny. They're not looking for people. They just go online. I'm horny,
Yeah.
Dick in hand. Little screen time, I'm good, right? I don't have to work so hard.
But then it becomes mechanical. Your brain gets used to, this is how I relieve this.
Exactly. This is I don't have to work so hard. Yeah. It's like if you had McDonald's downstairs and you had a drive-through, and every time you were hungry, all you had to do is go to the drive-through and never cook yourself a meal. You get lazy and you end up fat.
Yeah, and getting poisoned. That stuff's poison.
Exactly. So this is what ends up happening, right? So that's part of it. Another part of it is that kids are staying home longer. So it's very expensive to be out there. It's very expensive to leave home. And so kids stay at home. Because they stay at home, they're not comfortable having sex with their parents at home.
That makes sense.
So there's all kinds of reasons. It's not one reason, and I would never blame porn for anything directly.
Oh, yeah, it can't just be one.
It can't be, because porn has been around forever. It's just the access to it and the frequency of it and how... It's like it just makes us more lazy is really what it is. So I think we're going to have a generation of people who don't know how to properly socialize. Like, how do you learn how to engage with somebody that you're interested in? You learn it in vivo, like in real life. So.
I'm wondering if the repercussions for this are so obviously the birth rate would likely start plummeting because people aren't having it. That's happening already. Mm-hmm. But health-wise, there's also an aspect of it, even if you're not having sex, just to socialize, just to speak with people, to hang out, that we need, isn't there? Like, I feel good after I've spoken to some people, I've done some shows, I see, if I'm alone too long behind the screen, I start getting depressed. Like, I feel like, there's something missing. And that what's missing is that interaction. Yeah. So aren't these kids, isn't this also going to lead to more than just erectile dysfunction, right?
Yes. Well, we've seen that. So the research is showing that we have a generation, unseen, unprecedented, of the number of young people suffering from an anxiety disorder. People on on anti-anxiety or antidepressant medication. So of course, all of this is affecting. It has repercussions. We don't just have a COVID pandemic. We have a pandemic of anxiety and mental health issues in young people. Well, what is directly responsible for that? I mean, there's many factors, but I think this human interaction that you're talking about, first of all, we're humans. Humans need interaction. This is a human need, and it's not the same to be just behind a keyboard and interacting with someone. You need the facial cues and the facial, the body language and the touch and all of these things. It's what feeds us as humans. Otherwise, what are we in cages alone and we just interact behind bars like at a zoo? Like, it doesn't,
it's even more robotic than that now, the way we've made it.
Yeah, it's quite robotic, and we need to get back to, I don't know, whether we learn to limit a screen time and understand now that we do need to get out and maybe find more exciting things too. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is exactly,
I don't either.
But it has to start somewhere, and maybe with parents of kids who have to limit screen time and have to encourage outdoor living and things like that.
I'm with you on that. It's not one thing, because just what you said right now made me think of something. It's so interconnected. So let's say we tell parents, limit screen time, for example. But that's one aspect of it, because now parents are more busy, especially everything's going, inflation's on the rise, everything costs more, you got to work more. So you're working more, you have less actual time to spend with your kid. So there's less time you can actually dictate whether or not they're going to be on the screen, and most likely they will be if they're alone. So it's a whole vicious cycle of things that then causes us sitting here talking about, hey, what's going on with this generation? No one's social. But it's so big and so vast. There's so many aspects to it. We can't solve it with one answer.
Yeah, no. It has to be an effort made, I think, at a social, societal level, at a family level, on so many ways. And part of it is us talking about it and people just thinking and okay, what can we do, and we have to give our kids these social experiences, especially older. Like little kids are pretty social. They go to daycare, they go to school, like they're okay.
And they're curious.
Yeah, and they're curious and that's fine. But I worry more about the adolescent who isolates him or herself, behind the screen, and just like, to me, that's scarier because adolescence already a difficult time. So
one of my nephews, he's 18 now, and he was very, because of the pandemic, everything that just happened in the last 2 years, him turning into an adult, he was stuck inside the house. So behind the screen, school was behind the screen, and he started to just spend most of the time in his room playing video. So now we force him, basically, we'll bring him along, either since he's 18 to either a comedy show or here in the studio, see what we're doing. Sometimes he'll sit in on certain podcasts just to get him out there, see people socialize, meet, because I'm trying to explain to him, it's super dangerous if you keep doing this. This isn't life. Chatting with everyone and never seeing them, it's not. You have to get out there, see how people really act, see what the world is really like.
Sure, and instead of just playing, D&D, right, and online for hours and hours and hours and hours, and they are socializing. There is a social aspect to being online.
But it's supposed to be an additive, not
it
replacing.
Shouldn't be the only thing they do, but. Listen, there are very shy individuals where the internet has been a savior, right? They make friends, they are connecting with other people, and sometimes they meet like-minded people that they end up meeting in real life after. So it has been a real saving grace for a lot of people. It's just, if we're looking at it as a generation as a whole, I just think that's the part that worries me the most, is that, are we going to lose those social skills that we need?
What I like about you, and I'm assuming this, I might be wrong, is you seem like the type of person that if, let's say, somebody comes to you with a problem such as erectile dysfunction, he's 28, 30, you're not going to right away be like, all right, here, take some pills. You're going to try to analyze, like, it might not be.
That's right.
Okay, I like that.
I mean, listen, guys come to me, they wish I could give them a pill. They're like, just give me a pill, I'll be good. I said, no. let's dig a little. What's really going on here, right? And there's for most sexual problems are symptomatic of something else. So my job is to dig and look for the something else. It isn't just, here, take this and let's deal with the symptom. They'll come back if you don't actually deal with the cause. So let's look at the cause of what it is, and whether it's erectile dysfunction. Premature ejaculation is also a big problem.
That's a new big thing? It didn't used to be a big problem? It
was always a main problem for men. The problem is sometimes it's not really a problem, but men think it's a problem. Okay. So they'll come to me and they'll say, I have, they'll self-diagnose. I have premature ejaculation. I say, well, what does that mean to you, right? And they're like, well, I want it to take an hour. It only takes me 20 minutes. I said, that's not premature.
Oh, that's not premature. I'm just fucking with you.
So most people don't even have the facts that 95% of guys ejaculate between 2 and 5 minutes of intercourse.
I thought premature is like you're not even having sex. Yeah.
Right,
that's what.
Exactly.
Okay.
So under 10 thrusts, or within a minute,
a strong wind.
A strong wind. Yeah. Whoops. And for a lot of men, this is we're joking about it, but it's quite devastating. It's quite devastating. So part of it is the education piece, right? It's you're not going to last 20 minutes, and most women don't want you to last 20 minutes because most women don't get their pleasure from intercourse anyway. They don't climax through intercourse. They don't even know that. 80% of women do not climax from intercourse.
80%?
80%. They need clitoral stimulation. So what you do with your mouth and what you do with your hands is far more important than what you do with your penis.
So you're just wasting your time after a certain...
Well, it's but if you ask the actual partners, will they really care, right? So it depends. Obviously, if you're coming right before you to enter or whatever, it is a problem and it causes some frustration. Yeah. But that too is related sometimes to performance anxiety, sometimes to undiagnosed or diagnosed ADHD. They get very distracted. And so there's training things you can do to help men with this and to prolong their ejaculation. But it means getting in touch with your body and your sensations and knowing how your penis functions and having realistic expectations for yourself.
Oh, is that, you think they're putting so much pressure on themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like if they keep thinking, oh my God, I better last. What if I don't last? What if I don't last? Then they lose touch with their body when they do that. And then it's just like, oh shit, it just happened, like without even realizing that it's happening. Instead of, oh, I'm close. Okay, if I'm close, I can stop. Take a few deep breaths. I can stop thrusting, and then, okay, I'm focused. Like you're focusing on the sensations. A lot of guys think if they distract themselves, that helps them. Okay, I'll think about baseball. That'll distract me from It's the opposite. It has the opposite effect. You have to actually be really focused on what you're feeling, because when you feel that, you can start, like just taking control. And there's a whole movement online too. If you look it up, like edging, for example. Edging, right? It's like getting close, stopping, getting close. Like you just keep going to the edge and come back. So really that's what it's about. Teaching guys how to get to the edge, but not over the edge.
I learned all about this through internet memes.
See?
Yeah, it's amazing. Meme culture is good for that, because you'll get little tidbits of information. You're like, is this a real thing?
Right, and then you research it. Right.
Yeah, and then you find out it is. A lot of times they'll just meme something that's a real topic.
Right.
Oh, fuck. But I didn't think about how people will quantify it differently, so they'll misdiagnose the situation. Like, that's so interesting. And then you have a weird situation to deal with. Like, you have a problem. It's not premature ejaculation.
It's in your head.
It's in your head. It's something else.
Well, and it's happened like. It's not just for men, by the way.
You're gonna come at some point, dude.
Well, but women will come in also self-diagnosed, say, okay, I have a problem with orgasm. So then, I have to ask, like, okay, so they'll say, oh yeah, I have no problem coming by myself with masturbation. So you don't have a problem with orgasm. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, but I don't come with sex. So you think it's a problem with intercourse. So then I tell them, but most women don't orgasm with intercourse. Do you orgasm with oral sex? Yeah. Do you orgasm with this? Yeah. So you don't have a problem with orgasm. You have a problem knowing what turns you on and doing what it is that works for you. And now you have to communicate that to your partner. But just because you don't orgasm through intercourse does not make you like you have a problem. You don't have a dysfunction.
The problem is that you just haven't realized how your body works.
That's right. Okay. You have to realize that that's not how, you're going to have to work it, like get your clitoris involved in the intercourse if you want to come through intercourse.
So here's my question. Now I'm curious about something. So biologically, the way we're made, let's say, you get aroused, we're kind of made even before we had society to have sex so that we can reproduce, right? As a species. So then how is it that 80% of women won't reach orgasm through intercourse when that would be the biological kind of, hey, let's go, put it in here so I could feel good. You get it? So that it could force them to make babies. Is this something that changed throughout the years?
I don't think so. I think, I don't know if that's the animalistic thing, or I'm not sure what the answer is in terms of the evolution of the body. All I know is the clitoris is... I should have brought. I have a 3D model of it, and I should have brought it for you. But
I know what it is.
What is it?
The clitoris?
Yeah. What does it look like?
I know what it looks like.
What does it look like? Putting you on the spot. So it's actually a larger structure. You know that when we're in utero, we all start off as females.
Yes, I know this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the structure of the clitoris is the same structure as the penis. So the clitoris has the head of it, which is what you see.
The ultra-sensitive, a lot of nerve endings, yeah.
Exactly. But also full of nerve endings is the shaft of the clitoris. And then it goes in, and then it has these legs and these bulbs on the inside. So you can actually access the clitoris through the top part, on the inside, right? Through the sides, right? So, but each woman is different and needs a different kind of sensation. So some women like a light touch, other women like a lot of pressure. So with intercourse, for example, if you're just doing this, there's no touch to the clitoris, right? But if you're finding another position and you're putting pressure on that part, now suddenly it feels different. Sorry for all the visuals, but this is what we're all about, right? Yeah. I should have brought my puppets.
Do you use puppets?
I do. I have a lot of props. I have a vulva puppet. I have the wooden penis. I have other dildos, various dildos. I even have a silicone vagina for some women who feel that their vaginas are really, really tight and there's no way a penis will ever go in it, and I take it and I
don't think that's how
stretch
that
it
works,
and I'm like, do all that. So yeah, I use a lot of props in my office just because it's an educational, like visuals help when we're educating.
Do you ever go to schools?
I don't do I do. Yes, I should. Yes, I usually do CJAPs. So sometimes I'll do sexual health fairs. They'll bring me in, like I do a little booth, ask the sex doctor booth or whatever, and then I answer questions, and that's where I'll bring all my props and answer questions and stuff. So I do that. I'm part of an organization called the Sexual Health Network of Quebec as their president, but that's an organization that we create stuff for schools. Like we create to make education easier and tools for educating about sex. And we advocate. We're obviously an advocacy group for sex education in schools.
We need more of that, because when I was in high school, I've said this story before. I don't know if you've ever heard anything like this, but when I was in high school, and it was not too far from here, we had a male nurse who had come in. I remember this class because I had a guy behind me who he's an Armenian kid, but he was in high school. He popped a Viagra, and I remember him hitting the front of his desk with his. Anyways, the whole other story about that.
Oh my God!
But we'll get there in a second. But because I remember the male nurse had the wooden penis and a banana, and he was showing like difference. He was trying to say how to put a condom on. But then he started saying, I just don't want you guys to panic because we get a lot of weird things in the emergency room. And he said a story that I'm still convinced can't be true. He said, if ever you have sex in a pool, this is a male nurse who's saying this. If ever you're having sex in a pool, you might get stuck together. Stop calling the emergency room. Just finger the girl in the asshole. And I remember everyone thinking, like, is this something that happens? And it was kind of like, okay, now we're scared to have sex. Like, we're going to get stuck together. What's going on here? But I've never encountered anything like this in real life. It doesn't even make sense that you would get stuck together. But this is a nurse. This is a male nurse who told us this.
Right. Well, again.
Yeah. Is this to put fear in kids so they don't have sex?
Yes, sometimes it is. Like just the same way that when they do sex ed, they show you all these gross pictures of what your penis will look like if you have this particular STD or whatever.
I didn't understand. I thought that you can, and I remember asking these questions. I was like, so if I have sex with someone that doesn't have an STD and I don't have an STD, can we then develop an STD? And they were like, yeah, it's crazy the way it works. And I was like, holy shit. Yeah, it would scare the shit out of me. It would scare the shit, yeah. They went fear-based instead of just letting you know what's going on. Yeah.
And that's the problem, I think, because when you just go fear-based, you're not taking into account that kids are going to do it. Like teenagers are curious, and it's a natural part of our growth, right, of our development to be sexually curious, experiment, and things like that. So much better off talking about pleasure, talking about consent, talking about the risks, obviously, and talking about how to put on a condom and why you need to put on a condom and blah, blah, blah. Like, and creating scenarios, like if you get a girl pregnant, what happens? I once had this conversation with a 13-year-old, I think it was, and when I said, well, what would happen if you got a girl pregnant? And his immediate reaction was, well, she'll get an abortion. I said, really? She'll get an abortion? What if she says no? Yeah. You can't force her.
I will wax the stairs, ma'am. I will find a way.
Now at 14 years old, you're going to be a daddy, whether you want to or not. So it's not like, don't assume what's good for you is going to be good for her, or that she's going to do what you think she's going to do.
Also, you can't, if instead of using a condom when you're 12, 14, whatever it is, you're just thinking, I could just get an abortion. Abortions, I found out, after it's not also good to keep having abortions for women too.
It's not a birth control measure.
It's not a birth control measure.
Right.
I've been saying this and so here's another thing I was thinking about. I don't know how you feel about it, but it would be interesting to get your perception on this. So, because I know in Texas they're passing anti-abortion laws and there's all this stuff. Right. So here's what I'm saying. Okay, you could be full. You might think there's no case for abortion, which is crazy because there's many cases for abortion. Some of them is the most vile stuff. Imagine rape or
incest.
Or you find out that
you're not prepared, you're not ready to be a parent or whatever.
There's a serious problem with the kid, and you could totally bring it to birth, but it's going to have a terrible... There's many reasons.
Yes, many reasons.
Let's say you don't want that. Why is it that we're not educating kids better in schools so that instead of them getting to a point where they're using abortion as a birth control method, you're giving them condoms? At least my school, they were good with condoms. You could go and you could grab them, they would give it to you. So educate them so that it doesn't get to that point. Instead of hiding it, whether it's because of religion or what, you don't want to talk about sex at all. And then you get them in these situations, especially little girls who are getting pregnant, where their life, it hangs in the balance. Like, what do I do?
But look at the problem. So where you have places that want to restrict abortion access, these are also places that restrict sex education.
But that's what I'm saying. Right. It doesn't make
so
you,
it doesn't
you
make
can't
sense.
have
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
So you either need to educate about sexuality. Like if you don't want people to go for abortions in the first place, why don't you educate them?
That's what I say,
so that they don't get pregnant, right? So and the research bears this out. In the places where there's abstinence-only education, sex education, there is more teen pregnancy rates. So but yet I don't know. I don't know why it doesn't get in. Like that is the research. The research is clear that abstinence-only education doesn't work, but yet they keep sinking money into it or passing some of these laws that are crazy.
Just educate and it won't happen because people will know. Like, oh, yeah, I don't need to get to that level. Because they're going to have sex. They're going to have, no matter what you say, they're going to have sex. At least keep them safe. But again, because for little girls, if they start doing that when they're young, first of all, psychologically, I don't know what it does. I'm not a little girl. I don't know what it would do to me if I'm like, fuck, I'm going to get an abortion. I don't know. Maybe there could be complications. Even if there aren't, is that going to haunt me later? Like, did I get an abortion because I want to get an abortion? Because it's a whole fucking thing. Yeah. It's a whole thing. Instead of educating them.
It is a mind fuck,
it's a mind fuck,
There's definitely, it's traumatic, right? I would assume anything done to a body is traumatic anyway. Some people more traumatic than others. Some people who have moral... Again, I don't want to judge.
But even if morally you're like, there's no, even that, you're still taking a risk because from what I've learned, there's still dangers to your reproductive system. It's not a good thing to do.
It's still a procedure. It's still never a good thing. Let's be real. It's
no
not,
procedure.
It's like we don't want procedures. We want to avoid procedures. So the way to avoid procedures is to practice safe sex. There's the morning after pill. Also, there's other things, but you need education on these things. You need accessibility. So, for example, you don't use a condom or the condom breaks, you go get your morning after pill, you go to the pharmacy, you ask the pharmacist to give it to you, he'll give it to you.
It's like $60.
Okay, but in those places, you get them free at youth clinics, but in
I'm not a youth.
Right, but in those, then you can afford the $60. But in those places, you can't get it. That's the whole thing. We're going to tell your parents, or we're going to do this, or we're going to. So
they're setting you up for failure.
That's right.
And then they get mad at you when you fail. But you just led me down one path.
Right.
You knew it's the only path available, and then you get mad.
To have a baby that you're not prepared, ready, want, blah blah blah.
And how is that good for anyone? You were against it, so now you're
risk,
upset.
By the way, when they're young and pregnant, there is a health risk to the mother. So
I believe it.
Yeah.
When I was younger, there was still in high school some girls that. It would happen, and we'd have like 16-year-old pregnancies and all that. It wasn't too often, but I remember it happening and thinking, "Oh fuck, man, she's young. Like this is." And I remember some girls would take some time off, and then they'd come back and they'd try to finish their schooling, and it would cause all kinds of issues for them socially, obviously. I was too young to think about it, but we never talked about. Yeah, it's true. Maybe we should have done these classes earlier.
Much earlier.
Because I got the class I'm talking to you about that the nurse had come was in either Sec 4 or 5.
Yeah,
so that was at the end of high school. Yeah, that was when everyone's already banging.
It should be in grade 5.
Maybe grade 5 or 6.
Yeah, grade 5 for that talk. And throughout, obviously. But see, in my day, I don't remember anybody getting pregnant. But then again,
they wouldn't talk about it.
Your generation also had like glorified certain things, right? Remember the reality show 16 and Pregnant?
I hated that shit.
And things like that, or Teen Mom.
Yeah,
They had a bunch of those, right? Why?
How do you feel about does that psychologically doesn't it warp a generation where they think, oh, that's what influencers do?
I could do it. Yeah. Oh, that doesn't seem so bad. Yeah, it is. This is not reality. That's why I always hated reality TV.
It's not real.
It's not real.
No, those are all mutants normally on there.
Man, it's just not. It's far from real.
And you think that's probably contributed to people making terrible decisions. I agree with you.
And there's so many things that contribute. It's hard to pinpoint what one is. But listen, in the end, we're not going to change what's going on, okay? But what we can do is teach, right? We can maybe encourage parents to use these things as teachable moments, right? So you see, like, for example, when Teen Mom was on the show or 16 and Pregnant, I watched my kid watched. I have girls, and I watched with them to see like, okay, I want to know what you think about this, And then I remember one of my kids was like, "Oh, that didn't seem so bad," and I'm like, "Okay, we need to talk." Like here's other scenarios. Really, not so bad. Let's play this out a little longer.
Yeah.
So it offered me an opportunity, and then it was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. This is not." Would not be cool, right?
Especially because now there's so many. Back in the day, I mean, I don't know how it was. I don't know if it was easy for you when you were trying to get into social work and all that. But back in the day, for women, it must not have been so easy to do whatever the fuck they wanted in terms of career wise. So imagine throwing into the mix also a kid. And now that you have these opportunities, it's like open. You could become whatever. You could become a fucking astronaut. You're like, I'm gonna handicap myself at 15. You're just throwing another wrench.
Yeah, listen, it's never, look, having kids is not easy, but being prepared psychologically, mentally, and the support around you that you need is definitely helps to have, to raise healthy kids and to be healthy yourself and what have you. You want the conditions to be as good as possible, right? But getting back to what we can do rather than just, because we can bitch all day about what's wrong with our society. Ultimately, what can we do? What can you do? What can I do? We all have we have a
grassroots,
limited,
individual. You have to do your stuff.
And I always look at it as like we are a pebble, right? You're a pebble, but it creates a ripple effect. So my philosophy is you help one person at a time. Like you change the world one person at a time, right? So if I talk to my kid about this, my kid will talk to other, and then it just goes on, and then we can spread that. Or I talk to a group of parents. Now those parents are going to, start talking to their children, and that may prevent this, that, and the other from happening, and so on and so forth. So if it's about encouraging people to talk about it, my entire career has been about that. Why do I put myself out there, and why do I get on radio and TV and do all of this, all to talk about sex in this way, is to get the conversation going. Just getting people to talk about this is going to help ultimately.
Were you always this open? Were you always in your group of friends the
Yes.
one that would speak out? Yeah.
Yes. You guessed it. I was the one that even in high school when we had no access, right? All I had was encyclopedias because my father sold them. So I had a bunch of encyclopedias at home with anatomy and all this biology and stuff like that. And I had Cosmopolitan magazine. And in Cosmo magazines, it used to be like, want to give a guy the best blowjobs? Here are 10 tips. Want to do
how to have sex with a reptile.
Exactly, whatever it was. And so those were my sources. Like, imagine those were my sources. And then, Dr. Ruth was was an influence as well. And so, I don't know, it was just easy to talk about for me. So I just did, and that's what I always did. It's like,
did you like the original Degrassi show?
I have to admit, I don't think I ever watched it.
Really? Mm-mm. I think as far as Canadian shows go, I was exposed to it young. The original one, not the Drake one, before that.
Yeah, but I'm still much older than that.
Yeah. So now, but I think because that was the first time where I saw topics, sex, pregnancy, abortion, death, be discussed. Even, the stuff that was rough around the edges, we weren't even sure of the information yet, but there were even AIDS. It was the only show, and it was they wouldn't even do this in the U.S. It was a Canadian show that did it. It was Degrassi.
Yeah, good for
them.
And
that's why I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, because I think that helped, because I'm pretty sure it put a lot of fear in me. 100% it put the fear of AIDS in me. It put, I was very scared of AIDS because of that show. It made me think about abortion, about using condoms so you could avoid. So it kind of sparked that conversation.
And it made you think. That's what I like, is that ultimately I want kids to be critical thinkers of everything, right? So you want them to critically think about, that show said, that made me think about abortion. What do I believe about that? Suddenly you're opening up a conversation. You're looking inside and saying, what do I think about that, right? So you start to be a critical thinker of the stuff that you are now receiving. It's not just taken at face value. You're actually thinking about this stuff. So those shows open up that language. I know a lot of parents probably hated those kinds of shows, but
they were good.
I thought it's a good opportunity to sit with your kids and watch these things. Now, when my kids were that age, it was Glee that was on, and
I was too old for Glee.
Right, you were too old, but this was when my kids were in that age range, so we would watch it together and be able to talk about all these different issues that come up. This generation here, right this minute, it's sex education on Netflix. right? I don't know. Have you watched
that a show?
Yeah, it's a great
Is it good?
series, British series. Yeah, it's fabulous.
The
Yeah.
Brits are talking about sex.
Yeah, I think it's a British series. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
What do
it's
the
in
Brits know about sex?
Second season. They actually, you'd be surprised statistically, they're higher up than, they may not talk about it so, like you think they're upper crust and
I thought
whatever.
they were prudes.
They're not. Yeah, but the ones who appear to be the prudish ones are the ones doing the stuff in the background.
Yeah, it's true. Like David Beckham's
way
wife.
more,
Yeah,
you know, way more. So yeah, you should watch that. Now you're gonna talk about eye-opening adolescent sexuality. I mean, they cover all kinds of topics, and they don't just cover the topics; they show it. So it's like Degrassi, like on steroids.
But kids, you're right. Kids need that because it sparked a lot of ideas in my head and thoughts. And you know what still stayed with me was the episode where, because there was these two twins, and one of them got pregnant, and she was going to the abortion clinic, and she was thinking about getting an abortion. And there was people outside protesting and saying, "This is your baby. You're killing your baby." And it made me think. I had two competing thoughts in my head. I go, I get it. This is a baby, but so is the person about to have it.
Right.
But I remember thinking, and to this day, I have no answer for this. Who are these people? And I still think the same thing. Like, if all day you're protesting strangers, how do you not have a job? Like that's a full time. And I thought about, I go, who are these people? Like, are they paid? It was a hard thing to wrap my head around.
Good.
And even now I think about the same thing. If you're constantly every day at the same place, how are you affording this? What do you do?
See, that's a smart, that was a smart kid you were, because who thinks that, right? You're thinking like,
So these are adults. What are they? There was an old lady. What
Don't
the
they
fuck are
have
you doing?
don't they have other things to do? And why is it so important to them? And
Yeah, there was but you're right. It does spark an idea, and I think instead of hiding, look, I don't agree that we should show kids everything. Obviously,
and there's
that'll fuck them up.
age appropriate
Yeah.
things, right? Like you have to know child development and know when it's appropriate to expose them to this, that, and the other, even conversation.
But I think early high school, teach them, because that's when they start mingling a lot. I remember when I got into high school, that's when you start dancing, you start meeting girls, going out. Give them something so that they have some weapons on them. They don't make a dumb mistake that a little education could have avoided.
Right. And I also feel it's important to talk to to empower girls, to let them know they don't have to have sex if they don't want to, like what it is to be pressured, to speak to boys, how not to pressure.
We're editing this part out. We're a full pressure podcast. We're not. No, I'm with you. Yeah, they got to know that they have a say.
Yeah, they have a say. And we have to talk about what consent is. Like there's not enough talk about that. I also hear from young women who experience, let's say, pain or very little pleasure with sex, and they think that that's the way it should be.
Is that common?
It's about his pleasure and not hers. Yeah, sometimes that happens quite a bit. So,
and that's physical, not psychological.
Sometimes it's physical and psychological, both, or one or the other, or what have you. But the reality is, if they don't know that they shouldn't be experiencing pain, and that you can get help for this, and then what are they doing? They're tolerating pain. They're, going to be turned off sexuality. Like, you want to get to this early on, but if you never have a conversation about pleasure within sex education, then how are you going to get that message across?
But it must be, I don't know, is it a difficulty in someone at the school board making the decision, or is it a difficulty of finding willing educators to go in just for that? Mix of both.
The government in Quebec is quite. They have a great program, by the way. There's like a huge document of everything that should be discussed at every grade level. It's a beautiful document.
Okay, we do it right here.
We do have it here. We have the skeleton of a comprehensive sex education. I think we run into problems when it comes to how to run it across the board in the same way. Because up till now, it's really been, even though the course is compulsory, in other words, we have to teach sex ed, who teaches it is not compulsory. So it's about like which teachers are comfortable, which ones are not. You don't want to be taught sex ed from a teacher who's uncomfortable with talking about it. Could you imagine? Like, you'd be trying to embarrass your teacher and you'd get nothing out of it. Like, that would just be a joke to you. So
yeah. Like, I'm comfortable talking about it. I'm not a shy guy, but I can't see myself telling little girls about vaginas and penises. I'm not the guy. Like, I'm not doing this.
Even if you were a teacher in school,
like,
right?
This isn't for me. Get someone else.
So, but you see, the way I see it, like if you were asked me what my wish is or my ideal is Quebec has a bunch of sexologists who are graduates of like UQAM sexology department. Hire them, and every school should have one. Like, have a sexologist that is trained in teaching sexual wellness, sexual health, and that's it. Like, don't make it up to our teachers have enough to do. And adding them more pressure and more discomfort and more is just turning people off. So let's take the money and let's hire, maybe one sex educator per I don't know how many schools, and that's their job.
I like that idea.
To me, it's a no-brainer. So I'm not sure why we're not there yet, but it's a no-brainer to me.
I like that because I'm all for get the pro, get the person who's great at that job, like sports. Get the best person for that position.
Yeah.
That's how I think politics should be, but it never is. It's just who's your friend. But get the best person. Yeah. You ever were big into politics?
No.
Hate politicians.
You know what? I hate it. It's really tough. The only time I got into it, I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but when Trump came into power, his personality fascinated me.
Yeah, me too.
So my husband was like, "Oh my God, I've never seen you so involved in politics." I said, "It's not politics; it's human behavior."
Yeah.
I'm a human behavior scientist. So for me, the study of him, and I couldn't get enough of like, how does his brain work? And that's
Trump
the only thing.
The best president. I'm not saying other people are saying. Other people say that he's the best. He's probably the best president. I love that kind of stuff. Yeah. Every time he would want to compliment himself, other people say it.
Yeah, of course.
Everyone's saying, "Oh my God!" I love.
There's, when we talk about narcissistic personality disorders, and again, I'm not diagnosing anything.
No, I'm
looking at what everybody else has said and other psychiatrists have said. And there's books that have been written on it. I'm in the middle of reading his last. I don't remember what book it is. The one that was just written about his last year in politics.
Okay, yeah. I want him to write a book. I want to read something from the source.
He's not going to read.
He's not going to write.
He gets ghostwriters. He didn't even write his last book. Come on. Somebody else wrote it for him.
But a lot of people like that do that. They're like, let me dictate to you.
So not even dictate.
Chicks love me. Make that poetic.
Yeah. Except that he doesn't. It's not even a dictation. The guy follows him around and
just decides
and writes it and then passes it off and they ghostwrite. They don't. It's not a. It's not even a dictation of here are my words and whatever.
Oh fuck, that's extra lazy.
Yeah.
But I thought he was fascinating, and I prefer Paul. I would rather have politicians like him because of the no filter. I want to know what you're thinking, even if it's stupid.
Yeah, that's
I want to know because there was never any guessing games with him. He would say anything. He's like, I don't like this guy. This guy's a dummy. I rather that than this whole I say one thing and then I do the opposite. Because then you never know where you stand. You're like, wait, did we do that as a country? I thought we were against it. No, we say we're against it, but really we do this. With him, at least everything was out in the open. It was dumb, but it was so much fun.
Open. The problem is when there's a lot of untruths.
There was stuff that was completely made up. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what to do with all that.
That's what made him amazing. He was the first ever, he was the president of the most powerful country on the planet. And you could tweet him, and there's a chance he replies with, "Go fuck your mother." It was, we were living in the best timeline, and we didn't know how good we had it. We got upset. We banned him.
Then try to figure out the truth. Try to go figure out what's real
They never
not.
tell the truth. They never tell the truth.
So just assume they don't.
I assume they all lie. Because sooner or later, I find the lie. I'm like, you son of a bitch, you had me. So now I just assume, because I don't even think they have, and I don't mean in a conspiracy way, but I can't see how real power exists in our political leaders when every decision that they make that's big is always lobbied by either a foreign government that needs something, a big company, pharmaceuticals, oil, gun lobby. There's all these lobbyists. Like, you know what? Even I noticed this with Obama, because when he got in, when he was talking about change, he looked very different than after the 8 years. And you could tell after a couple of months, he started to look defeated because he had all these plans and then he got in like, you don't make these decisions.
Right. He realized he had no power.
Yeah.
It's like realizing how powerless you actually are. Probably.
Like, why did I go through this? I can't, you can't change anything. Just shut up, smile, and
be the face.
Be the face, because that's all you end up being. So that's why at least Trump, I was like, you know what? We got some entertainment. For 4 years, I got the craziest tweets.
I gotta say, entertainment, yes. Frustration too, but anyway, it was an interesting study. As a psychologist, I found it fascinating.
What did you think? Like, as a psychologist, what was your diagnosis? Not of him, but of society as a whole. Like, is this good for society? Bad for?
I felt it was I felt he did really well as a cult leader.
Yeah.
I felt that he responded well. Like if you look at cult psychology, whatever, you're talking about sometimes a vulnerable population who needed to believe in something, and
Isn't it always like that? Like even with Biden now, it's this. Everyone's culty.
Maybe politics is like that anyway, but I think with him it was even more. And I think people, you're right, bought into it because he was no filter. He didn't really have much class, not much class. Like he kind of represented your everyday Joe, except that he was a billionaire. Like he wasn't your everyday Joe. So I think there was how did people not see that? That he's not like you. He's not like you, nor does he even think you're on the same level as him.
People are willing to suspend whatever the hell logic they have, whatever common sense they have, because with politicians, this is why I hate politicians. It feels like when the way it is if you support a party or if you support a politician, you have to always agree with whatever they say. And I bought into it. Now I have to say yes. So even if they say something stupid, contradictory, something against your best interest, it's like you have to back them up. And I've noticed this. Trump, it was happening. Biden, it's happening. You're going against your own interests.
Right.
Just because you're like, well, I supported this guy, this woman, so now I have to agree with everything. You don't have to agree. You're an individual human being. You could be like, I like this. This is dumb. You can say that. What's the problem with saying that?
But I guess there's the brain is like cognitive dissonance a little bit. It's like if I support this, but I don't support that, how do I make sense of it? And so you get into this, I don't know. I mean, listen, I can tell you there were some policies I absolutely supported,
because you're a logical person. Right. You're like, okay, I can take this. I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bath.
I don't like him, but I don't like his personality, but anyway, I'm not American. I don't. But I'm anymore. It's like.
But that's because we're not black and white. There's so much gray. There's so much nuance to humanity, especially to politics. It's so complicated. There's this whole I have to agree with everything. It gets culty. That's why I'm glad you used the word. It gets culty, and that I hate. Right. I thought you liked this guy, or I thought you hate. Yeah, I hate this guy. Let's say, but that policy, of course, it fucking makes sense. Let's go for it, or anything. Right. But you can't. We had a bunch of years now, 4 or 5 years that you couldn't do that. You had to either be all in or out completely. I hate that.
Yeah, which isn't, it's not real, right?
No, it's not real.
It doesn't make it, then it makes it culty.
Yeah.
At that point, you're right.
Have you ever been a religious person when you were young or?
No, I think I'm traditional, and I think I'm a spiritual person than a religious.
Than an organized
person.
Religion.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I was raised in the Jewish faith. I was, we celebrated the regular holidays, but we weren't like an overly religious family. But still, traditions mattered.
Tradition matters to me too. Yeah,
tradition mattered a lot. So we had our that was even more for my parents. It was about traditions and family, and like the values were there. And so
since you've dealt with so many people throughout the years, and mostly they'll come to you for problems, sex related, but issues. So you always see people at not their most vulnerable, but their most enigmatic state. They're like, fuck, I need help. Throw me a lifeline here. What can I do? Did it make you change your perception of humanity, of people? Do you end up seeing all people like, oh, this guy's got a problem, let me try to fix it? Like you end up being the plumber, like you want to fix everything because that's what you're used to? Did you see yourself change throughout the years?
No, although I've always been somebody who is more solution focused. So as a therapist, it's like I got more solution focused as the years went on, thinking like, people come to you, they want a solution to their problems. They don't want to spend the next 5 years in therapy. Therapy is a luxury. Yeah. It's expensive. I want to address what they want to address. So they come in, they say, here's my problem. And we do an assessment. We figure out what the problem is, and then we look at, okay, what's our objectives, and how are we going to fix this? Now, some problems take a lot longer because they're more deep rooted, right? It depends where something comes from. If it's like a sex problem that can be dealt with education, they're in and out. Like they come for one session, I never see them again. And then you have...
And you like that because I helped, it's done.
Yeah, but I love doing the other stuff too because I love the depth of the work, and I love to see... I believe inherently people are strong. We have strengths we're not even aware of. So my job is to bring out the strength that you have to deal with life's issues. and I give you that support and take you along that route. So I believe people are very strong. We're very strong. Look at what humans put up with. Yeah. Look at what, like, I look at family members I know who have gone through the Holocaust and who come out and are successful and still are able to be happy. You can't, you lose your entire family, but you're still capable to be happy. Yeah. How do people do that? So that's a fascinating thing, is how resilient we are, how truly resilient we are. And I think we forget, as sometimes when we're in pain, we forget that we have that resilience to get through things, and we need the support and the validation and the help to show us where our strengths are sometimes, and sometimes we don't have it around us, so we can get it on the outside, and that's good, and that's what I like to focus on. So I like to focus on the strengths. I don't want to just hear people in my office complain and complain and complain and complain. So you can complain all you want, but ultimately, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, let's try to fix this.
Like, what are we going to do? Let's move. Let's go from a different. Like, I hear you. I'm compassionate. Like, I empathize with your pain, and you can repeat this every time. And you want me to take your money to hear those complaints, or do we do something different?
What was I want to find out when you started your clinic. Mm-hmm. How was that? Like, when did you decide, all right, I'm doing this on my own? I want to know about that adventure. I like the creation of that.
So I've always been on my own. So I was a social worker first, and I worked for like a social work organization. I worked in youth protection.
Okay.
That was a freaking eye-opening, okay? So that
There's a lot
was
of shit that happens.
2 years of working in youth protection, where I was involved in child pornography cases, like, going into homes and taking kids out who were involved in child pornography, child sexual abuse. I would walk into drug dens. I had, a gun held to, my head for going in. It was rough. I used to work with the police. There used to be this squad called the Morality Squad in Montreal, at the time, and I used to go on stakeouts. So you
saw the underbelly.
I saw the underbelly. Yeah, I saw the real. They threw me in there because I was just that gutsy, kind of like, I want that. I want to do it.
Take this combat knife and get in there, Laurie.
I want to do it. I was fearless then. I think I developed way more fears later. And then after 2 years of that, which was heavy, heavy work, I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. So I went back to school for a master's degree, and then and I specialized in sex therapy. At that time, I did a 2-year training program. So I was doing kind of two things at once, the master's and a training program. And I did those two things. Never finished that master's because I went on to do another master's in psychology this time. So I went from social work to psychology. And then, but all of that time, while I was still a clinical social worker, so I could work. I had a private practice. I was working with mostly sexual abuse survivors. I was working at the clinic, at the sex clinic. I was running groups for trans people going through the transition process.
Oh, shit.
For years.
How was that?
It was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating.
Were they getting a lot of harassment?
No, yes. I mean, it's not believe me, it was not an easy life for these people. But
I can't imagine.
It was at that time. We're talking about 25 years ago or something. Yeah, 25 years ago. So I was running groups to help them with the transition process, and they were support groups and things like that. So, and then I never worked for anybody after that. I worked only for myself in terms of a clinician. I never worked for anybody. I liked the autonomy. I worked for a little bit, contract work for while I was in school actually doing a PhD, I used to do for an employee assistance program. I used to do their evaluations and things like that. So anything that offered that flexibility. And so I always stayed as a, independent clinician.
I like that. I'm an independent guy too. I like doing things my way.
Yeah.
I
didn't want to depend. For me, it was like I wanted to make my schedule. I wanted to have kids my way. I wanted to be able, I used to literally breastfeed my kid, leave the kid at home with the nanny, run off to do 4 hours of patients, run back home, breastfeed again, play with the kid, go back, and I would just do this back and forth all the time. So I liked having that flexibility.
Yeah, you especially can't do that when you're working on someone else's schedule, when they expect something else from you.
Exactly.
And now, all your links are in the description already, but what do you want to let people know? Like, so they can hear the podcast, if they want to come see you, can people book appointments to come see you?
Yes, you might have to wait a little bit, but yes. The best way to get in touch with me is through my website, which is drlaurie.com, drlaurie.com. But on
link
there,
in the description, very easy. Just click on it. Don't think too much.
Don't think too much, right? So I also wrote a book called The Sex Bible for people over 50. So if you are 50 plus and you want to know what changes, or maybe you're in your 40s, you want to know what changes are coming physically and what you could do about it. It's a very how-to kind of book. So it gives you like the problem, but a solution.
Oh.
So yeah, it's got pictures. So
and I'm curious, the problem, so these are, I guess, common problems that people in the age range would come and tell you.
Right.
Okay.
Like with menopause or male, andropause or...
What's andropause?
It's like the equivalent of the male, like menopause in women, but...
I was unaware of this. No one told me that my period was going to stop someday. What's going on?
Not your period, but we call it androgen deficiency syndrome. So when not all men go through it, but some men have stopped producing testosterone, don't produce as much testosterone. This has an effect on their muscles, their mood,
and this is just
sex
genetic
drive. We don't know why it happens in some men, doesn't happen in other men, whereas all women go through menopause. But not all men go through andropause.
And is this a new phenomenon, or as far as we know, it's always been happening?
Yeah.
It's always been happening. We just never talk about it.
Really talk about it, yeah.
Oh, this is interesting.
Maybe we could do another show on that.
Yeah, we have to. Oh, I'm actually going to connect you with, so I got a couple of friends who, there's a urologist, Dr. Andrew Steinberg. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
He's got that show, Have the Balls to Talk About It.
Yeah.
Have you done that show?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you got to jump. They would love to
that
have
would be
you
fun.
on. Yeah. And they produce a very, very nice show. They're also starting a new podcast. They would, I think, you and a urologist too, and he's,
that would be fun.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll connect with that. But
yeah, absolutely.
we're going to definitely do another episode, and if we could do a whole one on this. I didn't even know about it. I guarantee you 99% of my, if not 100% of my viewers and listeners have not heard about it.
We should do a show just on the aging male.
Yeah.
Like just what happens to men as they age. And believe it or not, men start to age much earlier than women in many ways. So, but it's just not across the board. But oftentimes men panic when they look at themselves and say, wow, something's changed from like 5 years ago or whatever. And they're like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And sometimes it's just normal age-related changes you don't have to panic about.
You know what I'm scared of? I'm scared of aging, I guess, because I still feel youthful. But I'm looking at, if I would ever need it, doing what Joe Rogan does. He does that testosterone replacement therapy or whatever. Just
be careful with that. That's the only thing. Like you have to be tested properly. You got to know what you're taking because it has all the risk benefits. Well, that's where we can get an endocrinologist to talk about that or whatever. But again, like it has its risks, like any hormone replacement. So if you don't need it, in other words, if your testosterone levels are normal and you take that, you can be asking for trouble. So you have to, like, playing with hormones is a very complicated issue. And I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't want to like pronounce myself on any of those things. But we just did a podcast with a guy who talks about the hormone changes and hormones' effect on sexuality. So it's very interesting. So people can tune into Passion with Dr. Laurie.
Do you think people should keep exercising? Like even as they get older, if their hips...
God. Yes.
Good.
Are you kidding? I just had I was boxing this morning.
Goddamn
so
right.
I'm almost 60 years old, and
you don't look 60.
Well,
it's because the exercise and
I don't know.
I think
genetics. I don't know.
I think genetics play a part, but I from what I've seen from the people around me, the people that are older and younger, whoever consistently exercises and eats right, generally doesn't ever look their fucking age.
Well, I am a vegan for the last 5 years.
There you go. You're eating right.
And I've always done some form of exercise, but something I was more passionate about. Like I used to do karate, kickboxing. Now I just do straight up boxing. Things I feel like
it's like it's telling your body, hey, I'm not done yet.
Oh, I'm definitely not done. Like I feel young in my brain, and I want to just keep healthy. I don't know. I don't see why I wouldn't.
Because we had this, people after a while like, I'm too old for that. I'm too old for this.
No, I don't
I'm
believe
like,
in
You're
that.
not really. If you continue with a good positive mentality, you exercise, you eat right, you're gonna stay youthful.
And people say that about sex all the time.
I'm too old for
People
sex.
say that, yeah. They say, I'm giving up on. Like I hear that
giving
a
up
lot.
on sex?
It's like I'm too old already. I'm 60. Who cares? Like I don't have to. Why are you giving up on pleasure? I always say that. Like why are you giving up on what your body can do for you, which is give you pleasure?
Yeah, it depends on how old the person you're trying to have sex with. You could be too old, people. Remember that. So we're not advocating for.
I don't think you can be too well. Yeah, of course. We're talking about consenting adults here.
We're talking about consenting adults. But
That's right.
Dr. Laurie, it was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you
I
so
can't wait to
much.
have you back on, and we're gonna have, now that we know each other, we're gonna have a specific topic
Sure.
to dissect. Because you made me curious, so I'm sure I'm gonna get it in the comments of why didn't you let her continue on that? What the fuck? What's happening to me?
We can talk all day, right?
Yeah.
That's a reality.
Links are in the description. There's books available, podcasts available. You can even book an appointment with the doctor. Thank you guys for listening.